Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Sherina Salsabilla from C class, and now I would to review history of English literature from Old English era until 18th century or Neoclassicism era. So now I will discuss about the Old English era. The earliest form of the English language was spoken and written in Anglo-Saxon Britain from 450 Common Era until 1150. Thus, it continued to be used for some decades after the Norman conquest of 1066. Characteristic of the era are Old English literature consists of poetry, prose, charms, riddles, maxims, and proverbs, with poetry as the biggest form of literature during the era. The theme in Old English literature mainly revolves with heroic poetry and elegiac poetry. The significant authors and works in Old English are Cædmon was the first English poet in history with his works named Cædmon's Hymn, a poem about praise of God in English. Beowulf is an Old English poem that came from the Germanic heroic legend. The poem tells the story of Beowulf's heroic life from adolescence till his death. Many scholars believe the story was passed down orally first before it was written down. Because of that, there is many alteration or changes in the story. Now we move to medieval era. So the medieval era in Europe started around the time of the fall of ancient Rome and ended with the European Renaissance, and then this dates to be from 476 Anno Domini until 1453. During this period, a number of major upheavals reshaped Europe, permanently established Christianity as its major religion, and laid the foundations of modern-day Europe. It was also during this era that the social and political developments took place, which finally paved the way for a European Renaissance. Some of the most notable events of European history took place during this era. The characteristic of medieval era are Christianity dominated all of Europe during the Middle Ages, so many works are related to religion. In the center, England and Europe still use oral tradition. Only certain people are not illiterate, then books continue to be read aloud to listeners in the public area. In the era, the types of literary works are also increasingly diverse, namely poetry, ballads, rhymes, and others are growing along with the increasing popularity of the type of romance, usually containing extraordinary events that will not happen in real life, usually theme on love, chivalry, courtly love, morals, revenge, and religion. Now move to Renaissance era and Reformation era. So the Renaissance is a historic period in Europe that spanned from the 14th century to the 17th century. The Renaissance was a fervent period of European cultural, artistic, political, and economic rebirth following the Middle Ages. This era was also marked by the Reformation, a religious revolution or movement that challenged the Catholic Church authority in Europe. As a result, a new form of Christianity known as Protestantism was created and became the official national religion. Author and works are William Shakespeare was a renowned English poet, playwright, and actor born in 1564. William Shakespeare's contributions to the Renaissance were of great significance. He was not just a writer but an advocate of change in the lifestyle of people of Europe. just like the philosophers, artists, and other scholars. Shakespeare updated the simplistic, two-dimensional writing style of pre-Renaissance drama. He focused on creating human character with psychological complexity. Hamlet is perhaps the most famous example of this. William Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet in about 1594 to 1596, near the end of Elizabeth I's reign. Many new ideas were utilized when writing this play, like love at first sight and following what you believe is the correct path. Now move to Revolution and Restoration era. Each era has different social, political, cultural, economic, and environmental situations, which of course produce different events and trends from one era to another. This ultimately makes every literary work that was born in each era has its own characteristics. So the characteristics in this era are all the institutions that were closed within the puritanical movement were opened amid the Restoration period. The Elizabethan Romanticism was nearly over. With the conclusion of the past, literature took a modern soul and viewpoint and a diverse state of mind within the subject and style. Major and author works is John Milton. John Milton has since his own lifetime always been one of the major figures in English literature. He has been seen as a political opportunist, an advocate of immorality, an over-serious classicist, and an arrogant believer in his own greatness as a poet. These things. He was all these things, but above all, Milton was the last great liberal intelligence of the English Renaissance. Now move to the 18th century era or Neoclassicism era. The 18th century is a period of comparatively peaceful development in England. After the Glorious Revolution, England entered the Golden Age. The 18th century in England is called the Classical Age or the Augustan Age in literature. It is also called the Age of Good Sense or the Age of Reason. The Enlightenment movement was a progressive intellectual movement which flourished in France and swept through the whole Western Europe at that time. The characteristic in this era are reaction informed the neoclassical prose strictly adhered to the closed couplet. With the transitional thoughts, a reaction set in against the tradition, and experiments were made in other kinds of verse, such as the blank verse and the Spenceran stanza. Return to Nature Cowper's poems reflects his simple pleasures, his love of nature, his interest in the lives of the humble and the simple, and his sensibility. Nature was his best healer, and he anticipates the lake poets. He anticipates the lake poets in the way he expresses his gratitude. And then author works in this era. Alexander Pope was the predominant figure in the poetry of the 18th century. He was the representative poet of his century. He was the only poet who presented in his works almost all the essential qualities of the classical school of poetry. The works are The Rape of the Lock, The Dunciad, Epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot, an essay on criticism, and essay on man. Okay, that's enough for my explanation. So thanks for watching my video, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.